All right, what's up, guys? This is Loan for Cards again, doing another podcast. I have a super special guest. This guy, he is a maniac. He is very awesome at the same time. His, I know you're not gonna probably see his Facebook, but if you are a Facebook friend of his, you know how interesting he is on his Facebook. He's very secretive, but yet and mysterious, but yet so open. One of the most kind,
That's right,
open, gentle soul person that I ever met in my life.
my
And
man.
his name is Peter. Thanks, Peter, for coming on to this podcast.
You got it, son. You got it. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to start out with a question like, you still doing loan for cards? And that's what I led with. So the answer there is yes.
Yes. So this guy Peter, I knew him back in the day. Honestly, back in the day, because it's been like 12 years since we actually you know saw each other like physically.
Yeah, yeah.
We did our own stuff, and starting this podcast, like seriously, like I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this podcast. It's pretty much a freestyle podcast. There's no really a structure to this podcast. Something
Yeah, I can dig it.
I want to talk to different people, the people that I met, and initially this podcast is gonna be called a Chingu podcast, meaning Chingu is Korean for friends. So it's the
Oh, all
people
right.
that I know that
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
is very interesting and that inspires me. So Peter's one of those guys that is very inspiring. He's a very motivational speaker type of person, and when I thought about doing this podcast, Peter's name came to my mind like right away, because he's pretty awesome. And the funniest thing, the reason why he's awesome is like I send him a message on Facebook. I'm like, hey Peter, dude, I'm starting this podcast, and I think you're gonna be great on this because you're awesome and I want to share everything. This dude just replies back with yes. He doesn't ask any other questions. Like, yo, I'm
Nah,
down.
I'm
I'm
in.
gonna do this. He's in.
If it's
So
you, I'm in.
so like this guy Peter, like, now what are you doing now? Are you like a cybersecurity guy right now? I'm not sure exactly what you're doing right now.
No, I'm running IT worldwide for a fintech.
Oh, okay. So what do you do for that? Like, what's your job duties?
I lead teams in delivering world-class IT service.
Okay.
So basically, yeah, I create the teams and we answer the business need really. So the mission of my teams is mission number one is accelerate the business, and mission number two is secure the business, and that's
Oh.
what we do. We're not an IT squad that does IT for IT's sake. We don't. We may be interested in what's cool, but we don't produce projects and chase after stuff that isn't going to create revenue. It's all about the bottom line. It's a great company. Really excited to be a part of that company. It's a fintech. We're the gorilla in our space. We're the Cadillac in our space. And in any boardroom you go to, if you're talking identity verification, you're talking our company. So we're the gorilla. It's great.
Oh
It's a
wow.
great position to be in.
That is
Yeah.
very cool. And then how
Yeah.
long have you been in this position?
8 months.
8 months. Nice. Okay, cool. And you're liking it right now? Oh, there he is. He's back. Welcome back,
Yeah,
Peter.
yeah. I know you'll splice it
Yeah,
together.
I'll splice it together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, like I was saying, it's I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this team. I'm thankful to my wife and kids, to my friends, everybody who, kept me strong when times got tough. There was a couple times where I got down, but you got to stay hard in the search. You got to do what it takes to, you know, uh, be somebody who's a protector and a provider for your family. I feel very strong about that. One of the things that motivated me is I'd come up to the top of the stairs and I'd see all these pictures of my kids from throughout the years, and
Mm.
I was being strong for them, and really staying at it and going after it. And like I was saying, when you get an opportunity to be a leader, I was saying how leadership's all about serving the people. So to lead is to serve, nothing more, nothing less. And a lot of times people think when you become a leader, like at companies, it can be like meet, yeah, get
Mm.
on the bus, I'm driving, cool. But the company I'm at, it's more like I have strapped on to this rocket.
Mm.
If you would like to strap on next to me, there's a spot. Grab whatever you can, because here we go. So that's the type of company that we're at. It's dynamic, it's velocity and growing, so it's great.
That's awesome. So I remember before you used to do cybersecurity talks, right? You used to give those
Yeah,
out.
so that's actually that's been pretty successful so far. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I've spoken at Tedx twice for that, for online safety, online security. And my message there is self-worth before selfies. There really, when I speak to parents, students, and teachers across the country, there really isn't a technology that's going to 10 out of 10 protect your child from scenarios they find out online, whether it's on Discord or TikTok or any, other applications. Instagram, you got DMs where people can, message you and stuff. Really, it's about self-worth. So as a parent and as an adult, you model strong personality and self-worth and not get bullied, right? It's about, forgetting the haters, not paying rent in your head for other people and being strong. And that's what your kids will see. And that's what's going to protect them, in situations where they encounter the creepers. They're going to have that self-worth and, not buy into any sort of tricks and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm
So what
about.
are the like? Give me a couple quick tips on how to be secure or be self conscious of the cyber world.
Yeah, well, still, the stats are 90% of malware gets in via phishing, via email.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I worked together at a company that they tried to deal with malware. They tried to deal with email. Email is still the problem, believe it or not.
Correct.
There was a time, back in the early 2000s where almost 99% of all emails sent were spam. Now that's a lot lower. There's a lot better processes, and there's a lot of companies out there, solutions, and also just, watch groups and whatnot. But really, malware comes in via email. There can be a link to a site where you go to, and that's how you get the malware. But really, just not clicking on things that come in. I worry. One of my concerns is the elderly. They're maybe not as tech savvy. So if you have an older aunt or uncle, or if you have grandparents or a great uncle, a great aunt, just sitting down with them and talking to them about being aware of emails they receive or things they see on websites. Because really, just that urge to click onto something when you think like, I mean, I've received, here's what's funny. I've received an email that said Bank of America across the top.
Oh
It
yeah.
looked legit,
Mm-hmm.
right? It had the logo, it had the font, and you hover your mouse arrow over that link where it says to click for your password, and you see the browser will show you where it goes. It doesn't go to Bank of America. It doesn't go to any of their sites. It goes somewhere else. And that's a way that you can tell if you hover your mouse arrow over a link. That's a way you can tell. So I got a frozen webcam here, waiting
No,
for you to come back.
no, I'm good. We're both good on
Okay,
both sides.
cool.
Yeah.
Word. So it's stuff like that. It's about getting the awareness out. You might, for kids, a question I get a lot is, hey, when do you think my child should get a cell phone? And for me, it's about the self-worth test. If you're an adult in a child's life, if you're a parent, aunt, uncle, the self-worth test is a real quick test you can give a kid, and you can actually give anybody really. What it's about is you ask them, hey, so name three things you love to do that you're really good at. So let's just do that on this podcast right here, Sung. So think of it. You don't have to tell me. So name
Okay.
three things, or think of three things that you love to do that you're really good at. My daughter, her answer, one time I asked her, she said judo, riding horses, and eating ice cream. So that's an example, right? It could be art, could be a hobby, whatever. So what are your three things that you're really good at that you love to do?
Video games, martial
Video games,
arts, and
martial
eating.
arts, and eating. Right on. So here's a self-worth question. Would you let your partner or a potential partner or a best friend talk down to you about those activities? Denigrate you, maybe try to convince you to stop doing something because they think it's stupid or, silly. Would you let somebody talk down to you about the things you love to do that you're good at?
No, I never have anyone down talk to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you have what I would consider a foundation of self-worth. Now,
Mm-hmm.
knowing you a little more, man, you're a tower of power when it comes to self-worth and self-will, right?
Yeah.
Willpower,
Mm-hmm.
willpower. I would say for a younger person, a young adult, a teen, that's a tough question. They haven't faced a lot of those things in life, and sometimes you encounter, like if I'm at a high school and I pose that question. Sometimes you get some kids who are like, no, I wouldn't let anybody talk to me like that about something like gymnastics, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they play soccer. So that's somebody who has self-worth, strong, confident, right? And
Yeah.
then the other question I have, about the self-worth test is, can your child stay home by themselves for 4 hours?
Mm. That's a good question.
Because the moment they get one of these, and it has internet, they are in the wilderness. They are alone, abjectly alone. So if your kids are not prepared to stay home alone, another situational is you could ask your child or a young person in your life, if they want to get social media apps or thinking about getting a phone, you can say, all right, well, so you say you're standing at a Starbucks and you had given your real first name to the barista. I'm the type of guy that may or may not give my real name. I usually go with Gerald. That's my secret Starbucks name. Anyway, uh, and they call it the name, and then if you're like say wearing a sweatshirt of the school you're from, if you had a, an adult male turn, you go, oh, you go to East Middle School. My daughter goes there. What's your name? Is your child able to negotiate that, right, that moment, and assertively break off communications? Because there's three types of people in the world. There's people you know, people you kind of know, and don't knows. So people you know are the people you trust. They're in your circle. They're tight. They're usually less than fingers on two hands, right? That's maybe the lady across the street who really knows your kids very well, an auntie, maybe a cousin. The people who can pick up your children for you at school if needed. That's who their kids know. Kind of know. That's like a soccer coach, a teacher, somebody in their life, maybe a friend of the dad of those kids.
Yeah.
That's a kind of know, right? And those scenarios can be tough for kids. Then there's don't knows. Don't knows are those people that you've never met before. Your child has to negotiate that because, like I was saying, if when your child gets a phone and they're on the internet, they are alone. They have to be able to negotiate those type of conversations where, I mean, that's the type of things that you're going to encounter, in private messaging and those type of things. Like if you put something out there.
Yeah.
So really, my advice is talk about self-worth, asking your kids or those young people in your life that are, that you're a guardian or a protector of, asking them, questions about self-worth, or would they let somebody talk down to them? Could they negotiate at a Starbucks if somebody struck up a conversation with them? Could they assertively stop those communications and handle that scenario? One thing for kids, sometimes they have a difficulty not saying something. I know I'm filling the space right now but I'm a talker.
Yeah,
right?
yes, you are. That's why I got you on here.
My man. Um, but for a lot of people, they need to fill the space.
Yes.
So that moment right there was an on purpose, not talking moment.
Yes.
That is easy for me. I can do that anytime. In fact, just 2 days ago, I'm at home and somebody knocks on the door, right, and then rings the ring. I'm like, all right, that's nobody I know, because nobody does both. That's ridiculous. So, you know how I roll. I roll up to the door ready to rock. I look through the peephole and there's some dude standing there, and I just wait. And he's sort of shifting. It's a sales guy, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yes. Strong voice, low. You go down tone through the door. Yes. So I'm here in the neighborhood. I was just down the street talking to your neighbors. I'm like, okay, sales pitch number one. That's that's right out of the textbook. Hey, I'm here talking about solar. Uncomfortable pause. He shifts. He's like, where's this guy going? I'm like, and he's like, oh, I thought you were going to open the door. I'm like, no. Oh, well, I'm
stranger
around.
danger,
Okay.
stranger danger.
Yeah. You're not putting the helmet down and taking the lance to this castle. No way. So, it's stuff like that. If your kids are comfortable with not responding or not speaking, they might try to fill that space. They might try to, or get nervous and answer because they feel they should answer. No, that's that self-worth piece, right? I mean, I talk about, bullying and stand up to bullies. Adults are getting bullied every day, every meeting room in every company across the country. Just today, thousands of people were bullied into agreeing to a project they shouldn't have, or agreed to take something on they know that was a bad idea, or they were spoken over. That happens to women all the time in meetings. That somebody talks over them or takes their idea, repeats it, and then they're all like, "Oh, well done, right?" That kind of thing. So what you put up with is what will continue. And so teaching your kids the self-worth, that's the most important, not technology. I mean, yeah, sure, you can put the apps on, you can use some different things to see what they're installing and that kind of thing, or have them ask permission. Sure, that's all tech. Those are tech layers. Security is done in layers, but the key thing is self-worth. Anyway, that's enough on that, I guess.
He just
I
went
went
on
off. I just went
went off
off.
tangent. I love it. I love it though because it's good because this podcast just became a cybersecurity podcast pretty much.
Boom.
You know, so
Hashtag.
boom,
Hashtag
hashtag, yep,
online safety.
yep. Tag all those people and be like, yo, do you have virus protection on your software? You need some malware? Get some advertisement here, do some clicks, and hook it up right
Right.
here, for sure. But yeah, so like what Peter's saying, he does a lot of cybersecurity stuff, a lot of security things, but
Mm.
like if you think of someone like that, you pretty much think of nerds, right? Like really like straight up nerds. And the funny thing is, he is a nerd actually. He plays Dungeons and Dragons,
Oh
and
yeah. I mean the dice bag's right over there.
yeah. So, but on the twist of that, you're like, okay, obviously, yeah, of course he plays Dungeons and Dragons, but the one thing you guys don't know, this guy's a fighter, like a legit fighter, like hand to hand combat. He goes to every year down to Southern California. They get sticks, these knives, chains, and they beat the crap out of each other like the Fight Club. So what's up with that, Peter? Tell us some stuff about that.
Yeah. So the motto of my tribe, which is called the Dog Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
is higher consciousness through harder contact. We truly believe that the greater the dichotomy, the greater the transformation. So, I'm just, again, this is a thing of gratitude for me. I have been doing martial arts my whole life and just really grateful for all my teachers and all my instructors, all those who have trained with me. You have shown me, you know, uh, great teacher, bad student, right? Boxing with you. I remember boxing with you in the gym, and you would, after a while, you would just sort of look at me, and then you'd go ahead, just hit me, right? And then bang, 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 right? And then you're like, okay, now we can start, right? That's that kind of like get me into the,
Yeah.
get me swinging type of thing. And really, so it's about the being grateful to the coaches and teachers, and I did judo as a kid, and then I wrestled in high school, and then I went to the university. And while I was there, I met a couple guys who were they were into they practiced with sticks,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't quite learn what that was called, but there was some, if you remember old school Panther Productions,
Mm-hmm.
right? There were some these videos by these guys, and they swung the sticks as hard as it could, but they were still fluid and stylish. And I bought a couple of those, and I made some of my own original Eskrima sticks, certainly not out of rattan and not looking high quality, but just some basic dowels. Practiced as much as I could. Uh, then did judo competitively in college, which was great. Collegiate judo, medium level success there. Did okay. Really enjoyed that. Moved out to California. Was doing some BJJ here, and I saw there's an old. There's probably still people using it, but MMA.tv. Maybe you remember it. They
Mm-hmm.
had a forum board, and I saw a post about these guys, this Gentleman's Fight Club (GFC). And I was like, what is this? And they're hitting each other with keyboards and cookie sheets. And I was like, this is ridiculous, man. And you know how the internet is, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to be a keyboard warrior, right? So I'm about to jump on, pile on, and be a keyboard warrior and talk smack about these guys. Because in college, I had, while the UFC was coming up, UFC 1, 2, 3, I had organized some stuff where we'd put on boxing gear and pound on each other in a gravel parking lot, or maybe in a one of the larger, carpeted living rooms that were available to college guys or whatever. And then we would drive out to see the MMA fights. But that was back in the day. I came out here to California, 2000, and I was about to pile on in this MMA.tv forum post. And then I looked at the video, and I couldn't believe my eyes. These guys were, yeah, Gentlemen's Fight Club. Well, that's because they are gentlemen in that they expect you to go as hard as possible because they want to be tested.
Wow.
They are proper gentlemen. So this was back in the day, and I got in. I started, I know we led with the online safety thing. I mean, yeah. Do I have superpowers to find people online? Sure, I can do that. This time I used my superpowers for good, and I located that individual running the GFC, the Gentleman's Fight Club, and I reached out to him, and he was a little, taken back. He's like, people don't normally find me. I'm like, all good. Do you, is there something I can get into? I used to run something called Pete's Gym in college, and he's like, meet me at a Starbucks in Milpitas. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. So I'm at the Starbucks, and again, sort of a security thing. I take the almost last table back to the, I count the exits. I'm looking, and I'm sitting there, and a guy rolls up, and he looks to his right, and we take one look at each other, and I'm like, that's him, that's Gints. And I stand up and shake
Oh,
his
that's
hand, look
Gintz.
him in the
Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
He sits down and he's looking at me across the table, and I'm looking at him. And later on, he spoke about, he's like, yeah, as soon as I met you, man, I knew you were one of us and stuff. So then he ended up inviting me, and it's this garage, well, it was this garage in Menlo Park. And I show up and I'm like, all right, cool, what's going on? And he's like, okay, well, the first rule of Fight Club is if it's your first night, you have to fight first. And I was like, all right, mouth guard in, get the gloves on, the fingerless ones, in MMA.
Yeah.
And yeah, fight with sticks. I've hit people with chairs, keyboards, chains, cookie sheets. I've fought with, magazine rolled up with brass rods in the middle and taped. I've fought with pans, you name it, man. 2x4s, hockey sticks. Yeah, it was a wild time in the garage, and we're hitting each other as hard as possible because there's that agreement. Because I need to be pushed. I need to be really tested. Like nowadays, 2020, how often are we truly, truly given an opportunity to see if what we're made of?
Yeah,
Truly what
truly.
we're made of.
Yeah.
You could put on a pair of those shoes that are sitting in the closet not getting used, and you don't even have to run. You can grab that bike that you bought at over at the sports basement 2 years ago. You rode it 3 times, and now it's sitting next to the car, hung up by the get on that bike and see how far you can go until you can't, and then lift home. You know what I mean, right? So there's ways to push yourself, but really to do it fighting is just because you're a fighter, man. It's just another level. And so I guess you could say I earned my chops in the garage. And after a while, Gintz was like, "Yeah, man, you are down. If you really want to go to the big leagues, we've been crushing
It's
each
like
other.
it's like backyard wrestling to like the
Yeah, so
WWE.
if you want to go to the big leagues, you need to go down to LA and fight at an open gathering of the Dog Brothers." I'm like, and it was interesting because he knows people coming into his garage that he's a Dog Brother, but he doesn't say that. He does the fighting locally. I don't know if he had some sort of like I was a plebe or like a neophyte for until and it was sort of like almost like a secret he mentioned to me. We're not a secret organization. We call ourselves a fight club, but don't worry, we don't make soap. And we predate the movie, and I tell everybody. But yeah, so I went down to LA for that first one. Oh, is the nerves, the jitters. That's an adrenaline dump, chemical dump. You feel nauseous, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, I don't know. And a guy next to me just looks at us like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, I'm just really, really nervous. He's like, don't worry about it. I already threw up. It's cool. He's nervous too, right? He's that bond. Fighters, fighters know, who's game.
Yeah.
And got out there, and I did okay, and came back with all my IQ. That's the rule. You got to leave with the IQ you started with, and honestly had great times. And so I fought and fought, and I fought in those Dog Brothers gatherings for years. I fought hundreds of full contact stick fights. You name something, an implement, a tool, some around the house, I've smashed it over a guy's head, And after a while, they were like, okay, this guy keeps coming back, and he keeps maybe not getting better technically, but he stays in there, right? Grit. And I ended up, being ascended into the tribe. And then more years passed, and they were watching me. And I'd go to these. You can look it up on YouTube. You just look for Dog Brothers Gathering. Dog Brothers Gathering.
Can we give your name, your Dog Brother's name, on podcast?
Yes, I am Dungeon Dog.
Dungeon Dog. That's his name. Dungeon Dog. They gave him Dungeon Dog.
Yep. And then, it was amazing at one of the gatherings. As I'm talking about it, it's very moving to me. They ascended me to full Dog Brother because there's 3 levels. So you're a dog, then you're a Canada dog, and then you're a Dog Brother. And, being part of the Dog Brothers, being a full Dog Brother, thousands and thousands of people around the world, they do seminars and they train and they fight. Maybe they come to a gathering or two. We have dogs all around the world. We have some candidate dogs, and as a full Dog Brother, there are actually not many of us.
Wow.
There are not many that get to I want to say level, but that's the level that that the senior dog brothers, the elders, as we call them, are at. I'm a fighter. I they found in me a quality that made me, I'm not going to downplay the honor they gave me that I'm a full dog brother. It's really meaningful. I've had times in my life where those dog brothers have really come through for me. I had to, go to another city and help a cousin with something very, very tragic.
Mm.
And I was like, hey, I don't know this neighborhood. Can I get a couple of dog brothers to, help me out? And Foo Dog and Lazy Eye Dog showed up. And, Lazy Eye Dog is like 6'4", 260, just,
Wow.
but it's Foo Dog, the small guy you got to worry about. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know those guys where it's just like
Scrappy
they kind of
guys.
stand there like this, they kind of do this thing, and they keep head on a swivel for you as you're, going to handle something. So, yeah, and really, it's about brotherhood in the tribe. It's about growing up together. For me, it's about the gratitude and the hugs. You never really know somebody until you punch them in the face as hard as you can, and they punch you in the face, and you're both made better. You make art out there when you're fighting with somebody. You create something that never existed before, and the two of you are better for it. It's really a wonderful thing, and I couldn't be more grateful. I've really grown up a lot. I do want to give a shout out to one of my dog brothers, Kaju Dog. He actually makes custom axes, and so if you see here this axe I have,
Oh.
I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it actually has my dog brother's name. It says Dungeon Dog
Oh,
down
wow.
the axe handle here, and then the back has my family last name. And this is an heirloom piece that Kaju Dog made for me. So it's something really really important to me, and it's something that can be passed to my kids. It definitely will be. Funny story about Kaju Dog and fighting, if I could just tangent. Um, you know, um, uh, you'll find there, and maybe you can, while we're, you know, winding back the
Mm,
this blog, this podcast, you can show the picture of the
mm,
afterwards of a
mm.
chain fight I did down at the open gathering of the Dog Brothers in LA. After that, so I was bleeding pretty heavy. I took a chain to the head, and we wear these cord out fencing masks so we don't get blinded. But there's that, if I don't know if you know anything about a fencing mask,
Yeah.
but there's a piece that protects back down the back head. But there was an opening there,
Opening.
and
Yeah. There's an opening.
I
Yeah.
did kind of a rookie move. I didn't wear usually the knit cap, right? That's what you put on, and then you put the mask on so that even if something went between that space, you'd be okay. But I didn't at the time, and that's where the chain landed, of course. And anyway, so I was bleeding pretty heavy, and I go back, and we have a full dog brother who's a physician. He's a doctor, and we call him Doctor Doom. And his mask is painted like Doctor Doom, and he's got this green. And they lead me back there. And Kaju Dog is a Navy corpsman. He served, multiple tours, and he's, the Marines that he served with. They call him Doc, and that was, something that was just amazing to be helped by Dr. Doom and Kaju Dog, who's a Navy corpsman to Marines. And so we go back there in the locker room, and Dr. Doom's looking at me, and I'm sitting there, holding the compress to my head, and as well as I do that there's a heightened state after you fight.
Mm,
There's like there's elation, there's a joy. You're roughed up. You can feel maybe maybe you got scrapes and whatnot on your face from punching, or maybe you've had a successful submission, or you lost but you learned, whatever. There's that heightened sense of consciousness, higher consciousness through harder contact. And I'm holding the compress, and the blood's dribbling down, and Dr. Doom looks at Kaju Dog, and he's like, "Hey Doc, what do you think? Should we staple him?" And Kaju Dog's like, I'm not real good at stitches, doctor, but I'm real good at stapling guys. He had stapled guys in Iraq, right? And I'm like, kind of, okay. And he's like, all right, irrigate. And so they hand me the bottle. I irrigate the on top of my head, right? And you irrigate, you get and then here comes Kaju Dog. This is no anesthesia. You just staple right to the top of the head. Ka-chunk, 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 to close the laceration. And I'm sitting there, and when you're in heightened state, right, adrenaline, you have a much higher pain tolerance, and so he's like, Dr. Doom, the staples aren't sticking, and Dr. Doom's like, well, we just got to go to sutures then, and here we are, I irrigate again, and Dr. Doom just did the stitches right there, and it was a funny moment because I know what somebody getting plastic surgery feels like a facelift, because every
Yeah.
time they pulled the suture up, the skin on my skull would go up slightly and then come back down as they did the next loop. And I'm sitting there and I had this, grin on my face because you feel elevated after a fight. It's adrenaline, it's chemical. And it's in everybody, really. That's the amazing part about learning how to fight. Even if you box a couple times and have a few sparring things, you'll learn that you can do it. Anybody can do this. And as wild as the stories that people tell and that I'm telling right now. But anyway, so they stitch me up, and he hands me a GI issued bandana I have still to this day, and he's like, "Well, you're ready. There you go." And they hand me my mask, and I roll right back out and get in line to fight again. And everybody in the line is like, right on, right? And I went on to fight two more that day. And anecdotally, Dr. Doom's like, yeah, so wait a couple weeks and then go to a doctor, have the stitches removed. So I roll into my regular primary family, primary care physician, and he's like, so I'm not really going to ask what happened, but I do have to tell you, these sutures are excellent. So whoever stitched you up did a really good job. I'm like, well, I know who, so I know who to thank. And that's just one story out of so many. I'm not the dog brother. I'm certainly not the top fighter among the dog brothers. There are so many more that are so much better. But among the full dog brothers, that's the kind of things that I've been through and that I'm known for. So just very grateful for those experiences. And really,
So was that the worst injury that you sustained while you were fighting?
I would say, yeah. I mean, that had the most visual,
Okay.
like I was saying, I hope in this, podcast, we'll find that photo and you can throw it up in the corner
Yeah.
as I'm telling the story. But yeah, I would say that was probably the most visceral, injury, I would say that I've taken. There's been a lot of, I would say that, it's interesting. So I was learning the ropes and learning to get better as a combat stick fighter, a real contact stick fighter, learning how to use weapons, hands, anything. Because that's the other thing about whatever's in your hand. You fight enough times, it might get stripped. It might, you might get disarmed. It might go just in the mix. You're in the dirty boxing range and it goes flying. That's just a fact. So you got to be able to, work the tools that you have with what remains: hands, feet, knees, elbows, headbutts. Um, and to that, I think what's interesting about my evolution as a dog brother is when I started out, I would hurt a lot. I'd get really beat up and banged up, bruised. They call them stick hickeys. That's because the pounds per square inch of a rattan stick hitting the flesh, basically the skin and the flesh doesn't have enough elasticity to handle the pounds per square inch, and basically the tissue just bursts and you get bruises that last for 3 weeks. And they heal up, and your knuckles are scuffed up. But as I became better, I ended up getting less injured. I would fight tougher opponents, but be less injured. It became, I wouldn't say I was artful on my side, but on the other side of a full dog brothers tech, it became stick fencing. They were so good, and they could take those shots just like that, at range. They could, fencing move into range, a lunge, really, a lunge, and then a shot to the hand and back out, a lunge and a shot to the elbow and whatever, and as this level of stick fighting, real contact stick fighting went up, it was odd. The injuries became less large and banged up
Yeah.
injuries. And there was some years there where I went for a while where I every time I flew back home I had a concussion. I mean, every time.
Yeah.
A headache, a minor one. If you're puking and you don't remember stuff, that's a bad sign. The difference between fighting and getting a concussion is if you don't fight full contact for a couple of months, you're going to be fine, right? You can get banged up and have a headache, and then if you don't fight for a while, you just work the stick, you work the bag, you work a tire hung up in your backyard, you'll be fine. So that's why a gathering once a year, twice a year, maybe 3 times if you go to other countries, because we have gatherings all over the world: Germany, UK, up in Canada. So if you don't do them often and you don't fight at that high level, you can sustain a lot of you can take a fair amount. But then it's interesting. The gathering I became a full dog brother, my defense was the best it had been up to that point. And so it was interesting. I think what they were waiting for is for me to develop, what they call the de cuerdas block, or the four wall, or the roof, or the umbrella, those sort of techniques in arnis, eskrima, and kali that, I mean, I can swing and I can take it. it's like the elder dog brothers and the instructors, the gurus, what they were waiting for before the next ascension was they were waiting for art. They were waiting for the art, the defense. I mean, Floyd Mayweather, the guy doesn't get hit,
Yep.
right? He's an artist, man, with his, and that's just people say, people may say that they don't like watching him fight, but come on, man, you're not watching, then you're not respecting the science.
Yep.
You're not the art. So it almost was like as violent as the Dog Brothers is, the next levels, as I would ascend the levels, the art would become more real, the finesse, the defense, so that move that Mayweather does, that's the roof block and the four wall, that's the defense in motion, of course, everything with footwork's everything. But yeah, interesting. Great times. Yeah, so the Dog Brothers, I'm just so grateful for. I can't say enough good things about the Dog Brothers. DBMA, Dog Brother Martial Arts.
That's pretty awesome. So we went into that, and then we're switching through. Again, this is all freestyle, guys. All freestyle. And the thing about Peter is also interesting. As you can see, he's a nerd. He's a cybersecurity guy. He's a fighter, but then he has a very soft heart. I see you on Facebook a lot. You do a lot of donations or bread from like Panera Bread, and you do
Yeah.
homeless shelters. You're like Irish. What do we call yourself? Irish band song or Irish?
Well, yeah, I sing and play Irish music,
Yeah,
yeah,
music,
and
yeah,
also
for the
some blues
homeless.
and rock, yeah,
Yeah,
like
so
play
he,
guitar,
so he
sing.
does that. I'm like, how often do you do that? How often do you go to the homeless shelter?
Well,
Sing?
the homeless shelter really, I mean, it's the National Guard Armory down Gilroy, which is just the beginning of how amazing they are in that story. That National Guard Armory down in Gilroy, California, they in the winter months when it's raining and cold here, they move the vehicles out of the motor pool and they put down mattresses. I mean, it's incredible. That's really helping the people. And hats off to the California National Guard for doing that, for providing that facility. There's what's something called Emergency Housing Consortium, or EHC, that all bands together and schedules the different groups. I happen to be with a group called TZUCHI. That's TZUCHI. A quick way to explain TZUCHI to people is it's like the Taiwanese Red Cross. They're all over the world.
Okay.
They help people. The chapter here in Northern California really looks after the homeless in San Jose, the Bay Area, and was really involved. I volunteered after the Paradise Fire. I was able to go up, as a TZUCHI volunteer and volunteer for 2 weeks up there. So humbling. It was an amazing mission up there. So how often do I do it? Well, I'm getting back to the point of the Gilroy shelter. It's open during the winter months in California as a,
Okay.
as a Minnesotan, original Minnesotan. I have to say winter in California. When it's rain and it's cold, it's tough for those folks who are out of doors. So they open their doors up, and we go down on the weekends, and our night's Saturday, so TZUCHI goes down there, and what we like to do is we like to put tablecloths on the tables and fresh real flowers, and there are lots of programs where like you were talking about, the thing that my wife and I do on Sunday nights, we pick up Panera from downtown San Jose. We grab bread from a Panera that's left over, anywhere from 80 to 140 pounds, distributed to 2 homeless shelters. One of them's a battered women's shelter, and that's very important and great work. We're humbled to be a part of that. But on the weekend, when we're down at the Gilroy shelter, we realize that bread and bagels, they get a fair amount of that. So what we try to do is we try to bring different food, fresh fruit, drinks, fresh drinks, juices, and that kind of thing. And we learn so much from our clients. That's our word for the homeless. We call them our street friends or clients, and we learn so much from the clients. One time I like to play, like you were saying, Irish music, folk and blues and rock, and I was playing Folsom Blues by Johnny Cash, and a guy who you could tell he was institutionalized because he hung over his plate like this when he ate, and he would look around, and he kind of hung over his plate. So that's an indication of being institutionalized. And I was singing Folsom Blues, and if you don't know the song, it's about being in Folsom State Penitentiary. And the guy looked up in between a chorus and a verse, and he's like, "I'm glad I did my 8 years," and then went back to eating. And I'm like, "My brother, this is for you." And then, and so you learn to have these connections. Like, and another time I was at the shelter singing and playing guitar. It's amazing. I was playing a traditional Irish song called Spancel Hill, and it's about a guy who has a dream that he goes home. And after I finished playing, a guy came up and he said, "What's your name?" And I said, Peter? And he goes, my name's Pete. And I go, that's funny, man. He's like, Pete and repeat. And we have a laugh. And I was like, how you doing, brother? And he's like, good, good. He's like, I'm from Ireland and I haven't heard that song in 24 years. And he began to kind of, his eyes sort of welled up. And I was like, well, I was glad I could play that for you, brother. And, it's times like that where they give back more than we could ever give to them. We learn so much from the clients. It's humbling, and they're so tough, and they try to do their best, they try to do their best. And I think it's a tough situation here, in the Bay Area and Northern California. It's hard. It's tough. A lot of people, and you have different types of homeless in the situation, in the Bay Area. You might have somebody who's living out of their car, but showering at the workplace shower and then going to work. And then, after their shift, they go back to live in their car. There are families that do that. There's people who, don't have a vehicle and they maybe are out of doors, and so it's really, I'm just grateful for all the organizations that come together under the EHC umbrella. Home First over on Kirtner, they're just amazing. Every day they're helping the clients as best they can. They provide some long-term housing. They have a mix, kind of a hybrid approach. They have an intake where they take people off the street, daily if there's beds available. That's one of the stops where we bring bread, and it means a lot. I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, for all the people that are not volunteering and doing things, we appreciate people like you, Peter, that are doing more than enough. And I think what you're doing is great. That's why I want to share you to
Thanks, brother.
the people that watches my stuff, that like how great you are, of all the stuff you do.
It's just a chance to give back, man. If I can highlight one company though, during the Paradise Fire, man, any bar I'm ever in, I always ask if they have Sierra Nevada.
Nevada.
You know why?
Why?
I was up after that Paradise Fire, and you would not believe it. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company opened their doors. I'm getting emotional just talking about it. They said anybody can come in and get a meal anytime, order anything off the menu, as much as you want, as much as you need, come anytime to Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. And they did that for months.
Wow.
After the first 2 weeks, a family who had lost everything, maybe a family from Magalia or a family from Paradise, came in, and they'd sit down, and the server would say, well, you can order anything you want. We're out of steak. There'd be this little laugh because, that's usually what people order first, right? In the first couple weeks. But man, those owners, the owner operators of Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, cannot tell that story enough. I always, if I'm in a bar and I see Sierra Nevada, or that's what I order. That's what I drink for life. For life. I'm going to drink
Sierra Nevada for life. Wow.
You bet.
What
because
about
they
Jameson?
open their doors.
How about Jameson?
Oh, well, yeah. Come on,
okay, with the
on the whiskey side, but no, on the beer side. No, you experience that, up close, and you see it viscerally, and you see a company just open their doors and say, come down, sit, have a meal. You and your family, come down, have a meal, no problem. No, absolutely free, no cost. For months, they were feeding families in Chico, because people in Paradise and Magalia, and they were going to Chico. That's the next, the biggest town right there. So that was an incredible experience. That was,
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So basically, if you want to follow Peter, he has a Twitter account called OSK Peter. That's correct, right? OSK Peter.
That's right.
Give him a follow. Check out the stuff that he does. A lot of security stuff and a lot of just random things that he does. It's pretty interesting. I really enjoy reading some of the stuff that he puts out there.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so I appreciate it, Peter. You're still the awesome guy that I remember, and you're still the awesome guy that I know now. So I appreciate all the things that you do, baby, and make sure don't get hurt on the the fights.
Down in LA, no worries about it, man.
Yeah.
It's about knowing how hard you can go and how far you can go, and about pushing yourself. You only grow outside your comfort zone. So, just to restart, you want a short boost at the end of this podcast. It's not much to speak of, but I've been running every day for 14 days.
Wow.
This is January 14th. I did. Today, I just went out. I did my second worst run out of the 14. It was terrible. But you know what? If I do enough terrible runs, I know I can complete on a good day, because you have good days, you have rough days. On a good day with your training, who knows how far I could get, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, my first race will be the 8K in San Jose. That's a memorial to Pat Tillman, Ranger Pat
Oh
Tillman.
yeah, Pat Tillman. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Also,
so that's just a pitch for going outside your comfort zone. At the end of this podcast, really just try it. My first run, January 1st. You know how far I went, son?
how far?
0.4 miles.
Wow.
So I leave the house. My sister-in-law was over. I come back, and she's like, "You just left." I was like, "Yeah, yeah. I'm just getting started. It's January 1st, right?"
Wow,
so
it's crazy because I know you run so much like during your whole
so yeah, I
time that I
did.
know.
So hey, life has its ups and downs,
Wow, that's
brothers, right?
crazy.
So
This
yeah,
guy,
so
this
from
guy runs so much marathons that I know he has like 5 billion
yep,
medals from all these marathon runs that he does. Wow.
yeah. So I would say that was from 2008 to 2012. I was very successful as a amateur, just a runner who would sign up for the 10Ks and half marathons, and I did 3 fulls and 3 half Ironmans. I really had a lot of fun doing that. Grateful to my family for supporting me. And life has ups and downs, and
Wow.
I've gained some weight, and it's never too late to jump back into it. So I've been running for 14 days in a row,
Okay.
really short distance, so that the ankle doesn't hurt,
Okay.
and as we get older and whatnot. And I think consistency beats motivation every day.
Okay. That's the advice that it gives right there. The last one. Consistency beats motivation.
Yep, consistency beats motivation every
Okay,
day.
that's a good
Yep.
advice. All right, Peter. Appreciate
All
the
right, son,
time. Thank you very
my
much.
brother.
Peace out and have a good one,
Peace out,
everybody.
Iceman.
Thanks.
Cheers.